What if I told you that every major disaster in human history came with a warning first? Ancient stones carved with desperate messages, engineers begging their superiors to stop, scientists predicting catastrophe with chilling accuracy, and we ignored them all. Pompeii had 17 years of earthquakes before Vesuvius erupted. The Titanic received 6 iceberg warnings the night it sank. Chernobyl's engineers literally begged management not to run the test. They were all ignored, and millions paid with their lives. Today, we're diving into 15 catastrophic disasters where someone saw it coming, raised the alarm, and was silenced, overruled, or dismissed. These aren't just tragic accidents. They're preventable catastrophes that happened because arrogance trumped evidence. And by the end of this video, you'll realize that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't ignorance. It's the refusal to listen when someone tells you the truth. Let's descend into the warnings we refuse to hear. Warning number 1, Pompeii, the 17-year warning. For 17 years before Vesuvius erupted, Pompeii shook with constant earthquakes. In 62 AD, a massive quake destroyed entire neighborhoods. They rebuilt. The earthquakes continued year after year. The ground beneath their feet was literally screaming at them to leave, but they didn't. Why? Because Pompeii was wealthy. The soil around Vesuvius was incredibly fertile, enriched by previous eruptions. The wine was legendary. The trade routes were profitable, so they rebuilt again and again. On August 24th, 79 AD, Vesuvius exploded. A pyroclastic surge, superheated gas and ash moving at 400 miles per hour, swept down the mountain. 20,000 people died instantly. The heat was so intense it vaporized flesh. The warning was 17 years long, and they ignored every second of it. Warning number 2, the Titanic. 6 warnings in one night. April 14th, 1912. 6 different ships radioed iceberg warnings to the Titanic that night. The SS Mesaba sent the most urgent message at 9:40 p.m. Heavy pack ice and large icebergs directly in your path. That was the Titanic's exact route. The message was delivered to the bridge. The officers read it, and they did nothing. Captain Edward Smith didn't slow down. He didn't change course. Why? Because the Titanic was unsinkable. Everyone said so. The ship had 16 watertight compartments. It was a technological marvel. At 11:40 p.m., they hit the iceberg. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the Titanic broke in half and sank. 1,500 people died in the freezing water. 6 warnings, all ignored. Because arrogance doesn't sink ships, but it sure helps. Warning number 3, Chernobyl, when engineers begged them to stop. April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m. Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant explodes with the force of 500 Hiroshima bombs. The disaster happened during a safety test. The night shift engineers, the ones who actually understood the reactor, begged their supervisors not to run it. They pointed out that the reactor was already in an unstable state. They explained that disabling multiple safety systems simultaneously was insane. They were overruled. Why? Because the test had been delayed twice already. The plant director was under political pressure. The Soviet system didn't tolerate failure or delays. At 1:23 a.m., the reactor experienced a catastrophic power surge. The 1,000-ton reactor lid was blown off like a bottle cap. An area the size of Switzerland became uninhabitable for 20,000 years. The engineers were right, but being right didn't matter if you weren't important enough. Warning number 4, the Aral Sea, when they killed the 4th largest lake on Earth. In 1960, the Aral Sea was the 4th largest lake in the world. It covered over 26,000 square miles. Fishing villages dotted its shores. The Soviet Union decided to turn the Central Asian desert into a cotton empire. They diverted the 2 rivers that fed the Aral Sea into massive irrigation canals. Soviet scientists immediately warned this would be catastrophic. They predicted the sea would shrink, the climate would change, the fishing industry would collapse, and the exposed seabed would become a source of toxic dust storms. They were ignored. Cotton was more valuable than a lake. By 2014, the eastern basin had completely dried up. Fishing towns now sit in the middle of a desert. Rusting ships lie scattered across the sand, a graveyard of a dead sea. The scientists had the data. No one listened. Warning number 5. Challenger. The space shuttle. The O-rings that killed 7. January 28, 1986. The Space Shuttle Challenger lifts off from Kennedy Space Center. 73 seconds later, it explodes. All 7 crew members die instantly. The night before the launch, engineers from Morton Thiokol begged NASA not to launch. The forecast predicted temperatures in the 20s. The rubber O-rings that sealed the rocket boosters became brittle in cold weather. The engineers had data. They had test results. They recommended delaying the launch. NASA management pushed back. There was political pressure, media attention, a teacher in space. The president was scheduled to mention it in the State of the Union address. So NASA overruled the engineers. At liftoff, the temperature was 36 degrees, the coldest launch in shuttle history. The O-ring failed exactly as predicted. Engineer Bob Ebeling told his wife the night before, "It's going to blow up." He was right. Stay with me, because what's coming next is even more chilling. Ancient stones that predicted tsunamis, farmers who plowed their own destruction, a civilization that cut down the last tree. The pattern never changes, only the body count. Warning number 6. Japan's tsunami stones. The ancestors who warned us. March 11th, 2011. A magnitude 9.0 earthquake strikes off the coast of Japan. It triggers a tsunami with waves over 130 feet high. Nearly 20,000 people die, but in some villages, everyone survived. Why? Because they listened to the stones. Scattered along Japan's coastline are hundreds of ancient stone markers, some over 600 years old. They're called tsunami stones, and they all say the same thing: do not build below this point. Villages that respected the stones and built above them survived the 2011 tsunami with minimal damage. Villages that ignored the stones, that built modern towns below the markers because the land was flat and convenient, were destroyed. In Anayoshi, the water stopped exactly at the stone marker. The village was untouched. Nearby towns were obliterated. The ancestors carved the warning in stone. Modern Japan forgot. Warning number 7. The Dust Bowl. The disaster we plowed into existence. For thousands of years, the Great Plains were covered in deep-rooted prairie grasses. These grasses held the soil in place, even during droughts. But in the early 1900s, wheat prices soared. Farmers plowed millions of acres. They ripped up the prairie grasses and planted wheat. Agricultural experts warned them. They said the land couldn't sustain intensive farming. They explained that removing the native grasses would leave the soil vulnerable to wind erosion. They were ignored. Wheat was profitable. Then, in 1930, the rain stopped. Without the deep-rooted grasses, the topsoil simply blew away. Dust storms rolled across the plains. On April 14, 1935, Black Sunday, the worst dust storm in American history, struck. Millions fled in the largest migration in American history. The warning was in the land itself, but profit doesn't listen to prairie grass. Warning number 8. Easter Island. The people who destroyed themselves. When Polynesians first arrived on Easter Island, around 1200 AD, the island was a paradise. Lush forests, abundant resources. The population grew. They developed a complex society, and they began carving the moai, massive stone statues. To move these statues, they needed wood, lots of it. So they cut down the forests. At some point, someone on Easter Island cut down the last tree. They watched the forest shrinking. They saw the soil eroding. They knew the trees weren't growing back fast enough, and they cut down the last one anyway. Without trees, they couldn't build boats. The soil washed away. Crops failed. The population collapsed from 15,000 to a few thousand. The Moai stand as monuments to a civilization that destroyed itself. The warning was in every falling tree. Warning number 9, the Bangkao Dam, when politics killed 230,000. August 1975, China. The Bangkao Dam was part of Mao's Great Leap Forward, a massive infrastructure project designed to control flooding. Hydrologist Chen Xing warned that the dam was poorly designed. He recommended adding more sluice gates for flood control. He explained that the dam couldn't handle extreme rainfall events. He was labelled a right-wing opportunist and silenced. When Typhoon Nina hit in August 1975, the dam received a year's worth of rainfall in just 24 hours. At 1 a.m. on August 8th, the dam failed catastrophically. A wall of water 20 feet high swept through the valley at 30 miles per hour. Entire villages vanished in seconds. 230,000 people died. Chen Xing had the solution. He had the expertise. Politics killed it. And 230,000 people paid the price. Warning number 10. The Great Smog of London, when 12,000 died in 5 days. For years, doctors in London warned that the city's coal smoke was killing people. Respiratory deaths were climbing. The air was visibly toxic. Children were developing chronic lung diseases. The government did nothing. Coal was cheap. Industry was booming. Smog was just part of city life. In December 1952, a weather inversion trapped smoke over London for 5 days. The city disappeared into a thick, yellow fog. Visibility dropped to 0. People couldn't see their own feet, and they started dying. 12,000 people died from respiratory failure in just 5 days. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Morgues ran out of space. The doctors have been warning them for decades. They had mortality statistics. They had medical evidence. It took 12,000 corpses in 5 days for anyone to listen. Stay with me, because we're about to uncover warnings written in blood and delivered by the best minds of their generation. And we're still ignoring them today. The pattern is terrifying. Warning number 11. The Johnstown Flood. The Sword of Damocles. For years, residents of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, warned that the South Fork Dam was poorly maintained. The wealthy South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club had purchased the dam and modified it. They lowered the dam to widen the road on top. They removed discharge pipes to stock the lake with fish. They installed screens to prevent fish from escaping, screens that also trapped debris. Engineers said the dam would fail. Locals called it the Sword of Damocles hanging over Johnstown. The club ignored them. The dam was fine. It had held for years. May 31st, 1889. After days of heavy rain, the dam burst. 20 million tons of water destroyed Johnstown in minutes. 2,200 people died. The warning was a decade long. Wealth and privilege ignored it. Working-class families paid with their lives. Warning number 12. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. When profit locked the doors. Workers at the Triangle Shirtwaist factory in New York repeatedly complained about safety hazards. Exit doors were locked from the outside to prevent theft. Stairwells were blocked with fabric. Fire escapes were inadequate. Management ignored them. Locked doors prevented workers from taking breaks or stealing fabric. Productivity mattered more than safety. March 25, 1911. A fire broke out on the 8th floor. Workers rushed to the exits. The doors were locked. They ran to the fire escape. It collapsed under their weight. Trapped between the flames and locked doors, workers made an impossible choice. 146 people died. Many jumped from the 9th floor rather than burn alive. Bystanders watched in horror as bodies fell from the sky. The youngest victim was 14 years old. The warnings came from the workers themselves. Warning number 13, the Bhopal gas tragedy. The safety reports they buried. For months, workers at the Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal, India, reported safety violations. Malfunctioning equipment, inadequate training, dangerous shortcuts, understaffing. Internal safety audits documented the problems. Refrigeration units for toxic chemicals were shut off to save money. Backup systems were non-functional. Management ignored them. The plant was losing money. Profit margins were tight. Safety upgrades were expensive. December 3, 1984. Water entered a storage tank containing methyl isocyanate gas. A chemical reaction caused the tank to overheat. The safety systems failed. 40 tons of toxic gas leaked into the air. A deadly cloud spread over the city. 15,000 people died in the first few days. 500,000 were injured. The workers knew. The warnings were documented in safety reports. Corporate greed buried them. Warning number 14, the Deepwater Horizon. When deadlines killed 11. In the weeks before the explosion, BP engineers identified multiple safety problems on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig. Faulty blowout preventer, risky well design, warning signs of pressure buildup. They documented everything in maintenance logs. They raised concerns in meetings. They recommended delays for repairs. They were pressured to continue. The rig was behind schedule. Every day of delay cost $1 million. BP executives wanted the well completed. April 20th, 2010. The well exploded. A fireball engulfed the rig. 11 workers died. The rig sank 2 days later. For 87 days, oil poured into the Gulf of Mexico. 200 million gallons. The largest marine oil spill in history. Entire ecosystems were devastated. The warnings were in the maintenance logs. The evidence was in the pressure tests. Deadlines killed 11 people. Warning number 15. The Grenfell Tower fire, when they predicted their own deaths. For years, residents of Grenfell Tower in London warned about fire safety. No sprinklers, only one stairwell, flammable cladding on the exterior, faulty electrical systems, blocked fire exits. They formed a residents' association. They created a blog. They contacted local authorities. They documented every violation. In 2016, they wrote, "It is a truly terrifying thought, but the Grenfell Action Group firmly believe that only a catastrophic event will expose the ineptitude and incompetence of our landlord." They predicted their own deaths. In writing, publicly. June 14, 2017, a small kitchen fire spread to the exterior cladding. The flammable panels turned the entire building into a vertical inferno in minutes. 72 people died. The residents wrote the warning. No one listened until the building was burning. Stay with me, because the pattern we've uncovered isn't just history. It's happening right now. And the question is, are we listening, or are we waiting for the next disaster? 15 disasters, 15 warnings. 15 times we chose to ignore the truth. Pompeii ignored 17 years of earthquakes. The Titanic ignored 6 warnings in one night. Chernobyl ignored engineers with data. The Aral Sea ignored scientists with models. Challenger ignored test results. Japan ignored ancient stones. The Dust Bowl ignored agricultural experts. Easter Island ignored the last tree falling. Banqiao ignored the hydrologist. London ignored the doctors. Johnstown ignored the engineers. Triangle ignored the workers. Bhopal ignored safety audits. Deepwater ignored maintenance logs. Grenfell ignored the residents. Every single disaster had a warning. Every single warning was ignored. And the pattern is always the same. Someone sees the danger. Someone raises the alarm. Someone presents the evidence. and someone more powerful decides it doesn't matter. Because there's money to be made, because there's political pressure, because admitting danger means admitting we were wrong. So we ignore it, and then we act shocked when disaster strikes. But here's the terrifying truth. We're doing it right now. Climate scientists are warning us. Cybersecurity experts are warning us. Economists are warning us. AI researchers are warning us. And we're ignoring them because the pattern never changes. Only the body count gets higher. History doesn't repeat because we forget. It repeats because we refuse to listen. If this video changed how you see the warnings around you, hit that subscribe button, because this channel is dedicated to uncovering the patterns of history that keep repeating, the mistakes we refuse to learn from, the warnings we refuse to hear, and the truths that make us uncomfortable. Drop a comment and tell me, what modern warning do you think we're ignoring right now? Climate scientists? Cybersecurity experts? Economists? AI researchers? What's the warning we'll look back on in 50 years and ask, why didn't we listen? Share this video, because the only way we break the pattern is if enough people understand it. And let's learn from the past before it becomes our future. See you in the shadows.